This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Unified Purpose. You guys know what we do here. This is a podcast where we share inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. And today I'm joined with two very special guests, Tim Molesky and Kate Nazareth from Lace Up. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I always am excited to talk to nonprofits, but I think I'm really excited to talk to you guys about because I think your what you guys do is so different from what we normally see that I have a lot of really cool questions. But for anybody that might not be familiar or doesn't know what's up, can you tell us a little bit about Lace Up, about you guys and your mission, what you do, everything that we got to know?
Of course. As Daniela said, I'm Kate Nazareth. I'm a co-founder of Lace Up, specifically focused in the LA area. And this is Tim Molesky. He's the other co-founder, and he's also my husband. So we are a husband and wife duo team. We actually started Lace Up in 2021. And it's focused, and Tim's going to talk a little bit more about our mission, but we're very focused on serving underprivileged youth, specifically to get them into basketball. So during the pandemic, just a little anecdote of how this got started. So during COVID, Tim and I were obviously very heavily leaning on sports. He grew up, a basketball player, played Division III in college, and I actually struggled with childhood obesity. So through high school and beyond, I had learned that sports is something that I need in my life. And it actually has been such a huge theme throughout my life and has helped me throughout work, personal, as well as other things. So during COVID, we actually thought about, giving back to our community. Tim and I both served in our communities. So I actually was in college, a math teacher to inner city students in Washington, D.C., and Tim actually also served as a big brother in many of the different cities he lived. So we had this calling to give back to the community. Our neighbor, actually a single mom, she had a son and he would play basketball. During COVID, the nets were cut in Los Angeles County because they didn't want kids out there. And of course, for social distancing purposes. So, we really realized that there's basic equipment that students and kids need in our area. And so that's really what inspired Lace Up. It started with shoes and we came up with this kind of cheesy name, but we, turned to love it. So that's a little bit about who we are and how we got started.
That, to me, what's really interesting is that you guys got started during COVID. I feel like COVID kind of stopped a lot of sports and a lot of to do that because of social distancing and just like people going outside. Was it difficult to sort of start doing stuff like this that was also related to a sport and it was not only like a sport, but it was a group one, right? Because basketball is like, you have a lot of physical contact with other people during a time where like people were told to stay away from each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think one of the big maybe challenges we had, especially at the beginning, is when we started, it was 2021. There was a lot of programs that were either shut down, sheltered, however you want to call it. And so we, went into this time where we wanted to start donating and doing these things with programs that were kind of still figuring out what they were doing and how they were doing it in this kind of new world almost. So there was definitely a layer of that, from an actual working with different programs, working with kids, that was difficult. And really kind of growing that out of that took a little bit of that extra work. I think we did, as we'll kind of probably get into as well with our mission and everything, I think there was some benefit to that, and that, there were new programs popping up and there were new opportunities because, we had this shift and we had a difference in how things were working. So schools were, coming out of this and saying, oh, we need to make sure we get our kids back into school and athletics. So let's start a program. And so how can we kind of partner with those? So there were definitely some unique challenges we faced, and, getting in with people, having meetings, all of those things. But I do think coming out of that, there was kind of maybe like a new hunger to actually grow sports and have people get involved, because, you saw what happened without it. And now it's, having that push to get more involved. So being able to kind of build off of that a little bit and be able to kind of utilize that to our benefit, I think was one of the blessings almost of, kind of starting this during that time period.
What's really interesting to me is how sport, like you guys mentioned, is a huge gateway to, like, I think a lot of great things, right? Like you get healthier lifestyle, great hobby, escapism, whatever. But I think a lot of things that deter people from getting really into it are materials, areas like money. And I think what you guys do is kind of a really great way to sort of breach that gap. Because I think we don't notice that unless, like, a lot of times when we try to get into sports, most people meet roadblocks unless they're positioned in a very sort of specific way. To sort of continue to pursue these things, and sometimes even turn them into careers or like futures and anything. What I want to know is this mission that's so great, when it's actually put into practice, when are the moments where you guys really feel like that presence in the community is felt and like you're actually doing something to help them?
Yeah, I would say so. When we first started, we were initially just focused on donating shoes, right? Because when we first started, it was during the pandemic. And then we quickly kind of grew partnerships, which we realized reaching out to parents who are very busy sometimes is really difficult. So when we started connecting with coaches and understanding what the students needed, as well as different schools, when we go to those schools and have a moment to connect with these kids, understand what it's doing for their lives. And I think for us, that's a really big connection point where we see, okay, this is not just donating shoes. This is donating an opportunity for these kids to, one, work on their grades and academics. Two, it gives them a lot of structure. And three, I think that they're appreciative to be able to be part of something bigger, right? Which is, in certain schools that we're in, soccer is a big sport in east part of Los Angeles. So it's great to be the first, basketball team. And this year we actually started the first girls team at a charter school in East LA. And so I think just seeing those girls, especially myself, like, you almost envision yourself in middle school, and just hearing them talk about, what they love about basketball, why they've joined, and also just overall, just the overarching component of a community is really important. So we have different times, I think, when we donate shoes and we talk to different kids and we talk to different athletes. One thing I wanted to mention is our organization serves not just, younger youth, like we've gone to elementary schools, middle school, high school, but we also work with certain colleges. To your point about, different barriers to entry, there are student athletes in, community colleges that need specific basketballs to actually be seen by specific agents and scouts. So there's a lot about basketball. I actually knew nothing about it before I met Tim. So I have learned so much about the sport and the community, and to your point about the connection of money and trainings, et cetera. But I think in terms of schools, like, we definitely see the presence. And we see kids year after year when we build those partnerships coming back, being really excited. Like, that is like their reward for joining the team. And then I would say every year we do a partnership with Big Brother, Big Sisters of Los Angeles. And we run, thanks to a lot of our volunteers, which are, our family and friends that come out to help us facilitate this. We see a lot of kids who are just getting into basketball for the first time. And it was really cute. We did it 3 weeks ago. And there was a 7-year-old who was there as the first time. And he said, today's my first day to play basketball. And so we were talking about sports. And I said, what's your favorite sport? And he goes, basketball. It was the cutest moment where, all of those different administrative tasks that Tim and I have to do on the side, it just makes it worth it, right? So to see them excited, expose kids that, I think a lot of people give attention to students who are going to be the top. There's a big portion of kids who just need a sport, who need, to be connected. And they're not going to be going to play Division III basketball or in the NBA. but just the fact that they have a connection and a community is an amazing experience.
I think that's so true. It's so I feel like a lot of kids are overlooked just because they're not immediately inherently like, that genius kid or like that extremely talented kid. But I think a lot of people don't realize that like those children are usually exceptions, not the norm. And there's a lot of success that you can find with children who need just a hobby. I think just giving kids a hobby nowadays is incredibly useful, not necessarily to make it into something really tangible, but sometimes it's just the idea of giving them something to do that is not going to be just like going to school and then going and doing their homework, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do think that has been, one of the big things that we've tried to do with our mission is really about bringing kids into something that they may not have the chance to do or the opportunity to do otherwise. So whether it is through donating shoes to donating basketballs, running some of these, camps and clinics, it's something that, even if it's a couple hours, it's something a kid may not have the opportunity to do. And maybe it becomes one of those things where they just get out and make a few friends and hang out. Maybe it's something that they take and becomes, a lifelong passion. I think it's really about just setting up, the youth, especially those that don't always get those same opportunities, like you said, Daniela, to be able to do that. And I think that's, if we can kind of equip them, if we can give them those little moments, I think that's what we're really trying to do. And really just how that, that can always change their lives in a number of ways.
Totally. And you guys, I mean, Kate mentioned about how like this helps really with building communities. And I'm really curious because I feel like community work, right? Building that. And in sort of societies where a lot of times there's so many people from different backgrounds, different places, different life stories, it's not necessarily going to be always like the prettiest thing. It's not harmonious. I think there can be a lot of conflict, disagreements. It can be hard. I'm curious to know how you guys have worked through it, or sort of like faced this difficulty without losing sight of that mission and what the core values are.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is that through our journey since 2021, I do think that it's been a beautiful opportunity for I'll speak for myself, going into different communities, interacting with different parents, coaches, and to be honest, an area of our life that we never would have connected or met these people had we not started this organization. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is just a lot of people in underprivileged areas. A lot of the principals and teachers are working overtime. There's a lot of single parents, right, that are also, working double jobs. And so I think just communication's been really hard. We are email people. Both of us work, desk jobs. And so what's really challenging is, these individuals are working overtime and it becomes a inconsistent communication. In terms of just, different diversity and just communication styles, I think that obviously from a Lace Up perspective, we put on a different hat, right? We're Tim and Kate, we go in and we're not our professional selves. But I do think that we can struggle just in terms of, even when we started, we fundraised, thanks to a lot of our, family and friends when we had this idea. And then we thought, oh, it's going to be so easy to donate to youth, right? We live in a large city.
Yeah.
It became really difficult. Like we would cold call. I started cold calling coaches and saying, hey, like I'm a local nonprofit. I'm trying to donate shoes. And they're like, who are you? And so it became really difficult. I don't think building community is actually as difficult once you get the kids, once you get the parents, once you get the coaches. I think it's just, we realized originally we would communicate with parents. We're like, that's too difficult. They're really busy. So let's communicate with coaches. Okay, they don't really like email, right? They're out on the court training. So we had to change our communication style in terms of, our interactions with them. So we're still learning, but I would say for me personally, going into and experiencing and connecting with even people that work at a nonprofit has opened my eyes up to so much more of the world than I had previously experienced.
That's so interesting. I like what you guys have mentioned about sort of like getting the community and, you know, trying to sort of like keep that nonprofit thing brings me the question of what it's like to actually work with this behind the scenes, like with nonprofit work. Donating shoes, right? Like just looking at it from that perspective, great. But where do you get the funding? Where do you, you know, like how do you actually continue a steady stream of like shoes that you can give to people that are going to be helpful? I think a lot of people like rarely ask or think about what it's like to actually be thinking about all of those things and tend to just focus on the mission. A lot of people don't realize, in my opinion, that running a nonprofit is very similar to running a business. And also money is also a big thing that happens. But I want to hear, you know, what your experience has been since you like from like starting it to sort of maintaining it and also just always having that aspect in mind.
Yeah, it's funny because I was kind of thinking about this morning actually, and one of the interesting parts, I think, you know, when you go into starting a nonprofit, you think of the two big pieces, which is where's the money coming in and how does it go out, and those are kind of the, you know, the overarching principles of it. I think for us, you know, we kind of maybe took a little bit more of an untraditional approach in that we kind of went into this with an idea. But we didn't necessarily have, to Kate's point earlier, we didn't really have a base or a foundation or an individual place to donate. So it wasn't, you know, hey, we need to raise $10,000 so we can do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to do that. It was a little bit more of, let's take this idea and what can we do with it and what can we find throughout the city. So for us, there was this, you know, kind of period of like a mismatch of, okay, so now we've got this idea and now we've talked to people, they are excited about it and they want to donate, but now where is this money going and how are we going to, you know, do it? And what is this going to look like? So I think that was one of the big things is, you know, we've been able to raise money, but then you get these differing levels of kind of participation on the other side where it's, okay, we can do something small. And then you get somebody else that comes in and says, we want to do this whole revamp of, you know, courts and build this whole new facility. I'm like, that's, you know, that's kind of not where we're at right now. So it's kind of managing that a little bit. I also think that, you know, there's definitely a piece of it where there's a lot of back end parts that you don't really think about when you kind of go into this. And that's a little bit of, you kind of have to, I don't know the saying, to see the forest through the trees or whatever
Yeah.
it is, but you kind of have to see like what's going on and what you're trying to get to, regardless of those things, whether it's, you know, the bookkeeping, doing the little things like, okay, we have an event, we need to follow up and make sure we're getting insurance and waivers and lunch provided and little, you know, things for the kids and getting water bottles and making sure that we have shade and it's places for people to sit. Like it's all those little things that I think when you're running it, you don't really think about when you're just focusing on a nonprofit of saying, okay, we're going to give back to people. But I do think those are the things that we've kind of learned to figure out and kind of keep in the back of my mind. And as Kate kind of said earlier, it's really those moments that you kind of get a little frustrated with everything going on because it is it's an operation where sometimes you don't even have control of, you know, things that are happening, things that are changing, but you kind of have to look and see, you know, at the end of the day, those moments where kids come up to you and they're excited about it and they are, you know, they get a pair of shoes and they immediately put the pair of shoes on and the teacher is, you know, yelling at them. They're like, you need to take these shoes off because they're for basketball. And they're like, no, we're leaving them on all day. And they wear them all day, every day for the full week. And you get these kind of like phone calls like, these kids won't take these shoes off. And it's like, it's moments like that where you're excited about it. And it kind of outweighs all of the, you know, the pieces in the back end where you're like, I didn't think about this and this did not cross my mind of what we're going to have to do. And I think the last thing I'll say there is that we started, when we started and back to the point where it's like, we didn't really know what we were doing or where we were donating. We spent a couple of days where we were just we found some individual people and they said, hey, our kids need shoes or our kids need a basketball. And we drove throughout Los Angeles County.
Shoes and we drove to all these different
homes. Spent 8 hours in the car driving all these different places because it's like, we had some money and we wanted to donate. And we found some, you know, youth athletes that we could do that to. And it was really rewarding, but, you know, you also learn from it. Like, this isn't the best way to do it. There's gotta be an easier way. And so you kind of just evolve from there and find different ways.
Do you think that that's kind of like how the day-to-day looks like? So I think most of the time we tend to think about like the big picture, you know, like, oh, like doing this big mission. I talked to someone who was working for like rescue dogs, and she was like, you know, like the day to day is more just like making sure that every single dog is fed.
Yeah.
And just like thinking about like, oh, like the system that doesn't support animal cruelty or something, but it's more just like, how do I like, I need to make sure that they all like have their food, their medication, whatever it is, because like sometimes they'll have like special dogs, and it's very much like these smaller tasks that are sort of building towards that bigger goal. How does that feel like for you guys?
Yeah, I think in terms of tasks, I feel like we have it very seasonally, right? Because basketball season happens at different times, so it's definitely seasonal. What I would say is that you're absolutely correct. I would say, you know, nonprofits are not passion projects; they are actually a business. And as Tim mentioned, when we went into it, we were, you know, we want to donate to kids. This should be pretty easy. We're donating shoes. There is, you know, financials that you need to maintain. There is marketing you need to maintain. There's partnerships, calls, waivers, insurance. There's a lot of components for the right reasons, because youth sports is also a very niche area, and it's a very controlled area in the state of California. And so we didn't realize all the administrative pieces. So in the beginning, when we first started, you know, we had that initial, you know, amazing feeling, a very high feeling of, okay, wow, we're giving back. And then it started to kind of settle in that our daily tasks are, you know, emails and insurance and all these different pieces. And I remember you asked about fundraising and specifically around, you know, different avenues of where to go. And so we did a lot of trial and error, right? First, we were kind of posting on LinkedIn, asking our friends, Tim played basketball, but then we realized that's not really sustainable. You can't ask your aunts and uncles to donate at every Christmas, right? And we're also donating to large organizations, you know, schools. So, you know, we started, one of my very good friends told me about a company called Benevity that has a platform that you can post your nonprofit and your mission, and companies and or employees will match your donation. And so through that, you know, we realized that corporate donations are a different avenue we have to pursue. But to your point about your example with your friend, it is about research. It's a lot of, you know, I think one of the big things is we thought it was going to be more about being in the field, like being out there, seeing the kids, connecting with the kids. And it's really 10 to 15% of that, right? The majority is really computer work and connecting and marketing and all these components. But to me, it's not to deter anybody to not start a nonprofit. I think we've learned so much, and I find it to be a very enriching personal experience for me. I think it's just more people, you know, recently we had our basketball clinic, and somebody mentioned to me, you know, who's in a more senior leadership role, they say, a lot of people hear of nonprofits and want to start something. They have a mission, they want to start it. But really, when there's a call to action to actually show up and commit to that grit work, that administrative work, it's very hard to rally people, right? And so I think it's been extremely powerful and meaningful to me personally that we have connected, have given back to the students and in our community. I wouldn't trade that. It's just more understanding that you're going into a business, and also we're a husband and wife duo. So sometimes on our Saturdays, like Tim mentioned, we'll drive around Los Angeles donating shoes. Sometimes we'll have to literally whiteboard. Tim bought a whiteboard and was like, we need to get our thoughts organized. We need to get our partnerships organized. We need to understand. So it is a commitment, and that it's a powerful commitment. There's a lot of kids and youth that need all of us. And that any way you can give back, you should. It's just to understand what it is like to run a nonprofit. And I feel like there's so many, we're only, you know, a couple years in, there's very many more experiences that we've yet to learn.
So with all of this, I'm curious what actually keeps you guys going, you know, with the difficulties, the good things, like what actually makes you want to sort of keep fighting every day that you wake up and want to continue to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak for Kate, but I think for me, it's a lot of those moments, and knowing how you're impacting kind of the lives of kids, and how you're kind of bringing a positive, whether it's a few minutes, an hour, whatever it is, bringing that positive piece to the kids. I think that's really what keeps us going. It's those like little sparks of joy and everything that you see and you kind of hear about. And I do think that, there's a little bit of it's great, we're making some of this impact, but there's a part of me that sees, I think something you said earlier, it's hopeful that you'll be able to kind of make a bigger change in how things happen, and whether that's through something we're doing or something that somebody picks up or sees from what we're doing. It's kind of just that, how do things change as a whole? I mean, with youth sports, which we talked about, there's definitely a gap between, the kids playing at the highest level and what they're getting, and the kids that, aren't receiving the same attention. So it's like, how do you kind of close that gap a little bit? And I know Lace Up is not going to close that gap by itself, but I do think, there's steps we're taking and hopefully making some of that change to make sure that kids, 5, 10, 15 years from now will have these opportunities. And so I think that's what keeps me going. It's a balance of those little moments that you see on kids' faces, and just the joy that you can bring them, along with the kind of seeing that bigger picture and what you're able to do. And I do think that, we've hit both of those very well over the couple of years since we've been doing this, just in that, we have been able to build some of those partnerships that Kate said, and we have seen how, we have a team that increased their attendance in school increased, and their grades increased. And it's like, you're doing something that even if somebody doesn't see it, and even if the kids don't see it, there is that impact. And it's really just, kind of being able to, I don't know. It sounds cheesy, make the world a better place, but make the world a better place. I think that's really, what we're aiming to do. And I think when you put a lot of that, the administrative and the difficulties aside, it really boils down to, kind of seeing that impact and knowing that you're able to help someone out. Even if it's behind the scenes, it's giving them an opportunity that maybe they didn't have, and giving them the opportunity that, quite frankly, for myself as somebody that played basketball in my life, that I always had and I probably took for granted. So I think being able to bring that piece of it is just really powerful for me, and being able to kind of see kids smile on a basketball court that I grew up doing, and just kind of, it's very meaningful for me.
I think it's amazing. And I mean, it does sound cheesy, but I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of nonprofits are trying to do, and what we as people should be trying to do. Even if you can't be like the owner of something like this, you can always donate. You can always try to volunteer help. This is also what we're trying to highlight at Unified Purpose. But we're almost near our time. But before we end it, I want to give you guys a space to tell our listeners, our viewers, our audience, if anything about what we spoke about today resonated with them, if they're in LA, even if they're not and they just want to donate or help out, tell them where they can go and find you guys, talk to you, the whole shebang.
Take it.
All right. Yeah. So I think that, the big kind of like the big piece I would say is from a just general space. I think that volunteering and kind of giving back there's so many ways you can do it. And I think just kind of do it, find a cause you're excited about, you're happy about, and help out, because, there are these big undertakings like starting a nonprofit or being involved, or, kind of think of it as, if you don't have the money, donate your time. If you don't have the time, donate your money. I mean, again, sounds kind of cheesy, but I think that there's something to that, is that there's always ways to help people. And it's just kind of finding something that you're excited about. So whether it is just going out and spending a day volunteering, I mean, do it, because it does change a lot of lives. And there are bigger impacts that'll happen that you won't even see. So I think that's kind of the big messaging I would say and take away from this. If there's something you would like to do, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can reach out to us. Our email address is team @laceupla.com. So you can reach out to us there. You can find Lace Up on LinkedIn, Instagram. So, there's different ways you can find us. You can just pop into Google. So, reach out to us if you would like to do that. We have ways you can donate through there, and we have, links. We have our website, laceupla.com as well. You can donate there. You can, reach out to us on that. So, if there is something and there's a purpose, please connect with us. I would also say that, in the Los Angeles area, that we're always looking for new places to donate and new partnerships to
build.
So I think that's always the thing is if, maybe you're not involved directly in a school or a youth program, but you have a friend that is or know some students that are. I mean, we are always welcome to having conversations and learning more about programs. And honestly, a lot of the things that we've done and a lot of places we've donated to are from either a random reach out or a message or an email, or it's a friend of a friend that said, hey, I know this place is, could use some help. Is there something you can do? So I think there's that connection point. We're always, like I said, looking for new places to partner and to grow the organization.
Awesome. I will be adding the links to your website on the description.
Thank you.
Access. And I want to thank you guys both for being on the podcast today. It was great. And I think we learned a lot. I actually don't know a lot about basketball, so very eye-opening for me.
I've learned quite a lot now.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. And everybody listen to our podcast, subscribe, follow us, do the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim and Kate, for being here today.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Daniela.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.